There are some stories that refuse to go away, even when the headlines fade, even when the court cases end, even when the man at the center of it is gone. One such story carries a single name: Jeffrey Epstein. Not because he was powerful, not because he was wealthy, but because his life revealed something deeply unsettling about our world. It showed us how evil can hide in plain sight, behind money, influence, and smiling faces. The Bible once said something that feels chillingly relevant today: for nothing is hidden that will not be disclosed. Luke chapter 8 verse 17. At first, Epstein's story looked like many others. A successful financier, private jets, exclusive parties, friends in high places. But beneath the surface, something dark was growing. And darkness always grows quietly. Epstein didn't operate in chaos. He operated in order: private islands, sealed agreements, silence bought with money. That's how darkness prefers to live, not loudly, but comfortably. The Bible tells us this is nothing new. People loved darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. John chapter 3 verse 19. What shocked the world wasn't just the crimes. It was how long they continued, and how many people looked the other way. Young lives were harmed, innocence was stolen, and all of it happened while the powerful remained protected. This is where the Bible becomes painfully honest. If you see the poor oppressed and justice denied, do not be surprised. Ecclesiastes chapter 5 verse 8. God does not pretend the world is fair. He tells us the truth: systems break when God is removed from them. Epstein's greatest weapon wasn't intelligence. It was power without accountability. And Scripture speaks directly to this kind of evil. Woe to those who make unjust laws, to deprive the poor of their rights. Isaiah chapter 10 verse 1-2. When power is no longer restrained by conscience, when wealth replaces morality, the vulnerable always pay the price. And there is one group the Bible speaks about with fierce protection: children. Jesus, gentle and compassionate, once said something terrifyingly strong: if anyone causes one of these little ones to stumble, it would be better for them to have a millstone tied around their neck. Matthew chapter 18 verse 6. Those words were not spoken casually. They reveal how seriously God views the harm of the innocent. This is not just criminal behavior. This is spiritual rebellion against God Himself. One of the hardest questions people ask is, how did no one stop this sooner? The answer is uncomfortable, because evil doesn't survive only on wicked people. It survives on silent people. Fear, compromise, self-preservation. The Bible addresses this too. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. Ephesians chapter 5 verse 11. But exposing darkness is costly. It risks reputation. It risks comfort. It risks safety. That is why silence feels easier. And yet, silence is where darkness feels safest. Then came the moment that stunned the world. Jeffrey Epstein died before he ever stood trial. No courtroom, no testimony, no full truth laid bare. For many, it felt like justice was stolen in plain sight. Questions were left hanging in the air. Names were never spoken, systems were never exposed, and victims were left without the closure they deserved. That kind of injustice hits deep. It shakes our trust. It makes us wonder whether evil really ever pays a price. The Bible does not ignore this frustration. The psalmist admits it honestly: I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Psalm chapter 73 verse 3. In other words, I watched the guilty succeed. I saw them walk free. I saw them die comfortably while others carried lifelong scars. Sometimes the guilty seem to escape. Sometimes the truth feels buried forever. Sometimes it looks like darkness won. But the psalm does not end in despair. The writer says, until I entered the sanctuary of God, then I understood their final destiny. Psalm chapter 73 verse 17. There is a moment when human perspective reaches its limit, and God's perspective begins. Earthly courts can be silenced. Evidence can disappear, trials can be avoided, but God's justice cannot be delayed, corrupted, or escaped. What is hidden from cameras is never hidden from Him. What is sealed in files is still open before heaven. And what history never judges, eternity will. Earthly justice has limits, but God's justice does not. And in the end, no one truly gets away with evil. Not before a holy God who sees all, remembers all, and judges perfectly. There are sealed files on earth. Locked drawers, classified documents, records marked confidential and never to be opened. But there are no sealed files in heaven. Scripture is clear. Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Hebrews chapter 4 verse 13. What governments hide, God sees. What power protects, God remembers. What money buries, God exposes in his time. Every secret meeting held behind closed doors. Every hidden transaction passed quietly from hand to hand. Every act done in darkness, assuming no one is watching. God sees it all, not only the actions, but the intentions. Not only the crime, but the cover-up. Not only the silence, but who benefited from it. And the Bible reminds us with sobering clarity, God will judge people's secrets through Jesus Christ. Romans chapter 2 verse 16. This is not symbolic language. This is a warning, and a promise. Justice may be delayed on earth. Cases may collapse. Trials may never happen, but justice delayed is not justice denied when God is the judge. In the final court, there are no loopholes, no powerful connections, no missing evidence, only truth, and a judge who cannot be deceived. This story is not meant to feed fear, not to stir obsession, not to fuel endless speculation or dark curiosity. It is not entertainment. It is not conspiracy. It is not meant to distract us. It is a warning about power when it is detached from God, a warning about what happens when influence replaces accountability, a warning about silence, when people know something is wrong but choose comfort over courage. It is a warning about what happens when a society forgets righteousness and calls evil private, calls abuse complicated, and calls truth dangerous. But this is not only a warning, it is also a call back to conscience, a call back to courage, a call back to the light. Scripture commands us clearly, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Proverbs chapter 31 verse 8. Not someday, not when it is safe, not when it is popular. Now, protect the vulnerable, defend the wounded, stand for truth, even when it costs something. And above all, walk in the light. Because darkness survives on silence, but light exposes, heals, and sets people free. The Epstein story reminds us of something ancient and unchanging, a truth written into the moral fabric of the universe. Darkness may hide for a season. It may cloak itself in power, wealth, and secrecy. It may delay exposure and silence witnesses. But darkness never outruns the light. Light is patient. Light is relentless. And when it comes, it exposes what darkness worked so hard to conceal. Scripture anchors us in this assurance. The Lord reigns forever. He judges the world in righteousness. Psalm chapter 9 verse 7-9. God is not rushed by headlines or limited by timelines. He reigns beyond news cycles, beyond courts, beyond human systems. And his judgments are not partial, not forgetful, and not compromised. What seems unresolved to us is not unresolved to him. What appears unfinished on earth is never unfinished in heaven. So this story leaves us with a choice. May we be people who choose truth over comfort, even when truth unsettles us. Light over silence, even when silence feels safer, and justice over fear, even when fear whispers that nothing will change. Because when the Lord reigns, darkness does not have the final word. Light does.